Now, Prime Minister doubled down about China being an important issue at the election and how he is absolutely rock solid in standing up for Australia and not managing the relationship code that you'll so often hear from others in the game.
Well, I'm not going to sell out Australia's free speech. It's never going to happen. Australia is a free country where you can speak your mind, and under our government, you can be very sure that will be retained and always stood up for in whatever forum is necessary.
Now, of course, this is because the Chinese have been complaining about Senator James Patterson from Victoria, well, of course, who criticised China for being exactly what they are. Here's an example of what he told a bunch of people in Europe overnight.
Further, it empowers the federal government to ultimately terminate arrangements it deems to be inconsistent with Australia's foreign policy or may adversely impact Australia's foreign relations. This is aimed at countering a strategy by authoritarian states, most notably China with its Belt and Road deal, to seek to divide us internally between different levels of government.
All right, so let's start with you, Nicolle. Obviously, the government is absolutely clear on matters to do with China. I'm not sure too many barbecues will be stopped by what's happening to our mate James Patterson, but still, the clarity here, the Prime Minister couldn't have been more direct today when he's pushing back against the authoritarian nature of China.
That's right. He was absolutely clear, and I don't think we've had a Prime Minister who's taken a stronger stance on China. He's protecting free speech. He's said he's not going to sell out to China, and he is going to make sure that Australia protects our sovereign interests and also looks after our neighbours. What I've found very interesting is Paul Keating's recent comments on this matter, which the Minister for Defence, Peter Dutton, has given Keating a new label that I thought was quite fitting. He's called him the Grand Appeaser, Comrade Keating. Now, what we actually need to know, though, of course, is what is Anthony Albanese going to do were he to become Prime Minister of Australia? What will Penny Wong do if she's Foreign Minister? What will the federal Labor Party's position be on China? Will they be grand appeasers like Comrade Keating? Perhaps Sam can let us know.
Well, of course, Christina Keneally, who would be the Home Affairs Minister, well, she'll just meet with the propagandists from the United Front and then tell you it's your problem for noticing. Sam, does Labor have a China problem? And if not, why not?
Look, I don't think they do. So I guess there's a few different components to this. The first is that Scott Morrison really didn't have a choice, right? He had to do what he did. So the part that you skipped over was that in response to James Patterson's speech, China went and lodged a formal diplomatic protest with this. In that case, what's the Prime Minister going to do? He's either going to take China's side or his own members' side. So, of course, the Prime Minister had to do that. I've said before on your show, Paul, there should not be, when it comes to foreign affairs, in particular when it comes to our relationship with China, there cannot and should not ever be a scintilla of difference, a breadth of difference between the two parties on this, because that is exactly what the CCP want.
I agree, but if you actually look at what Penny Wong said, if you actually look at what Christina Keneally said, if you look at the statements of Albanese, he can pretend to be what he is today, but there's a long history of managing the relationship, and they've politicised everything, and particularly standing up after the pandemic. So I don't disagree that that's what should be happening, but in the pursuit of classic oppositional politics, there has been a few pieces of paper that they've tried to put.
Sure. So I would put China and our relationship with China on a pedestal that very few issues occupy. And on this, I would say it is up to Scott Morrison, it is up to Anthony Albanese to sit down with each other and come to terms with what the agreed lines are and what the red lines and demarcations are and what the positions are going to be. And I think that's on both of them. I really do.
Yeah, but also, I mean, again, Nicolle, I can show you plenty of quotes, and, it's not that hard. Just simply search each way elbow China, and you can see every video I've done about, saying one thing and showing another thing. And that's the issue is that whatever the political future of the government may be, when the world was suffering through a pandemic, we were the country that stood up and said, come on, you've got to do something. And then slowly, other major nations backed us in, which was great. They could have left us swinging. China tried and continues today to try to sort of put our head on a spike as a warning to other countries about what you do when you stand up. But that was a real sort of, first one to blink moment. And we've seen people like Albanese talk about manage the relationship. We've seen people like at the state level, McGowan, his first chance to leave Perth won't be to go to Brisbane. He said by his own words it'll be going to Beijing.
Yep, precisely. So, look, the Australian people have got a really big decision to make next year, and that's who they want to be their Prime Minister. They know that Scott Morrison, as Prime Minister, has taken a very strong approach to China. He has our national interests at heart and will protect freedom of speech, will protect our sovereignty, and will look after our region. We don't know what Albo and Christina Keneally and Penny Wong are going to do because, as you've just described, Paul, their policies are all over the shop, and I think Sam's just really presented a fairly utopian view of how foreign policy's been working in Australia recently, particularly with the opposition leader involved, because we've just seen Albo out there sort of backing the French in recent weeks, for goodness sake, over the submarine. So I've got absolutely no faith in the opposition leader to put Australia's interests first. He just says what suits him in the moment.